Order. Order. I call this meeting to order. This is the Standing Committee on Natural Resources and Economic Development. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the traditional ancestral lands of the Mi'kma'ki people. My name is Tom Taggart, and I am the MLA for Colchester North and the chair of this committee. Today, we will hear from witnesses regarding the Coastal Protection Action Plan. Before we start, I ask that everyone please check and make sure you turn off their phones or put them on silent. And in case of emergency, please use the Granville Street exit and walk up to the Grand Parade. So I will now ask committee members to introduce themselves for the record by stating their name and constituency, and I'll start on my left here.
My name is Kyle McQuarrie. I'm the vice chair of the committee, and I represent Inverness.
Brian Wong, MLA for Waverley, Fall River, Beaverbank.
David Bowlby, MLA for Annapolis.
Julie Van Exen, MLA for King South.
Ian Rankin, Timberley Prospect.
I'm Krista Gallagher. I'm Halifax Chebucto, and I use she, her pronouns.
Lisa Lachance for Halifax Little Sable Island, and my pronouns are they, them.
Thank you. And I would also like to note the presence of Legislative Counsel Genevieve Harvey and Legislative Committee Clerk Tamer Nesabaya. So the topic is the Coastal Protection Act. I'd like to welcome all the witnesses and ask them to introduce themselves, and then we'll begin with opening remarks. But I'll start, please, first with Ms. Karcz.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm excited to be here today. My name is Meredith Karcz. I am the Program Manager of Coastal Ecosystems at the Confederacy of Mainland Mi'kmaq, and my pronouns are she, her. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kelly Ferrier, and I am the Confederacy of Mainland Mi'kmaq's project lead for the Community Eelgrass Restoration Initiative, and my pronouns are she, her.
Hello, everyone. I'm Associate Deputy Minister Andrew Murphy with Environment and Climate Change.
Hello, Laurie Skaine, Executive Director of Climate Change Division with Environment and Climate Change.
Hi, I'm Simon Ryder-Burbidge, Senior Marine Coordinator with the Ecology Action Center.
Good afternoon, Dr. Kristina Boerder, Research Scientist at Dalhousie University and Science Lead for the Community Eelgrass Restoration Initiative.
Hi, Dr. Derek Tittensor, Professor and Jarislowsky Chair in Marine Ecosystem Forecasting at Dalhousie University.
Thank you very much for attending. I think we'd like to start with the opening comments, and we'll start with Ms. Karcz.
Do I have to lean into the microphone, or can you hear me like this?
You're good, right? Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. As I shared, I am the Program Manager of Coastal Ecosystems at the Confederacy of Mainland Mi'kmaq. I'd like to start by thanking the committee for inviting us to be here with you today. The CMM is a tribal council that works to serve and support the 8 mainland Mi'kmaq communities towards self-determination and community enhancement. On the Coastal Ecosystems team, we work with communities to monitor, steward, and restore coastal habitat such as tidal wetlands, kelp habitat, and eelgrass meadows. The Mi'kmaq have stewarded the lands, waters, and coasts of Mi'kma'ki since time immemorial. And as an ocean-faring people, they have millennia of ecological knowledge and a continuous relationship with the coast and ocean. Increasingly, our community members are observing coastal concerns such as erosion, flooding, storm surges, habitat loss, and degradation, which many, as we know, are caused and exacerbated by climate change and coastal land development. A challenge we consistently face while working with community to protect coastal habitat is the many barriers to acquiring mandatory permits from the Nova Scotia Department of Natural Resources and Renewables. I would like to bring attention to 2 current examples of how the existing DNRR permitting system is impeding our combined efforts with Mi'kmaq communities to protect and conserve coastal areas. The very work that this government has said is necessary in the Environmental Goals and Climate Change Reduction Act, the Coastal Protection Action Plan, and multiple other documents provided in this meeting's research package. In our work with CIRI, the Community Eelgrass Restoration Initiative, CMM had an eelgrass replanting community event planned in Bungag Mi'kmaq Nation that had to be canceled, and this was due to permitting issues and delays last summer. The CIRI team submitted the permit application documents well within the required timeframe, which included a letter of support from Chief and Council, outlining the band council resolution that had been passed, supporting this project and event. This is the highest form of approval that a band can provide. While trying to acquire the mandatory permits for this event, the obstacles that we faced included lack of communication within DNRR, confusion over personnel roles in the permitting process, miscommunication from DNRR on the status of our application, and unclear and changing expectations on the required documents, and ultimately delays that forced us to cancel this meaningful event. A community caterer and MC had already been hired, and community members, including youth and elders, were very disappointed to miss out on this meaningful opportunity to steward and care for their coastline of their community, which they have been disconnected and marginalized from doing so for generations. Secondly, we are currently working with Ecology Action Centre to support Pictou Landing First Nation in developing a kelp program. The problem here is that Pictou Landing First Nation would like to grow kelp for multiple end goals, 2 of them being conservation-focused, with intentions to outplant kelp in certain areas for habitat restoration, as well as phytoremediation to remove contaminants leaked from Boat Harbour. However, as it currently stands, there is no permit for growing kelp in Nova Scotia for any purpose but commercial harvest. So, Pictou Landing First Nation can apply and receive permits to farm kelp to harvest and sell for income, but they cannot apply for permits to grow it along their coast for restoration and remediation purposes. Thus, Pictou Landing First Nation has no current recourse to legally conduct their own Mi'kmaq-led kelp conservation and restoration efforts in their territory on unceded lands, and this is preventing them from taking action to protect and care for their coastline. The CMM asks that this committee commit to taking steps to support removing barriers that Mi'kmaq communities and others currently face while trying to acquire these mandatory permits to do coastal ecological work. We ask that these steps include supporting more direct communication and engagement with Mi'kmaq communities, including between nations and the DNRR, and having DNRR internally and externally clarify which personnel are responsible for various parts of the permitting process, as this is a great source of confusion. I will end with this quote from the Environmental Goals and Climate Change Reduction Act, Section 5.2, subsection E. It states that this government shall create conditions necessary for making progress towards sustainable prosperity, while defining prosperity as sustainable when economic growth, environmental stewardship, and social responsibility are integrated. Thus, CMM hopes we can work together to help make the necessary changes to DNRR permitting to facilitate sustainable prosperity along our coast, which most certainly includes Mi'kmaq-led environmental stewardship. Thank you.
Thank you. I recognize Deputy Murphy, please.
Good afternoon, and thank you for inviting us here today to speak about the Nova Scotia Coastal Protection Action Plan. Mr. Chair, Nova Scotians are a coastal people. The ocean sustains our economy, contributes to our quality of life, and our coastal communities are an important part of who we are as Nova Scotians. There's also no doubt that climate change is impacting every area of our province. Its impacts are varied, from more extreme heat, changes in precipitation, stronger and more frequent storms, and so on. To become resilient to the impacts of climate change, we need to rethink how and where we build and live to keep ourselves, our homes, and communities safe and sustainable. I'm honored to be Associate Deputy Minister at a department that has an entire team dedicated to helping Nova Scotians first understand the impacts associated with climate change, from wildfires to flooding, and then developing tools, resources, and programs to help Nova Scotians adapt and protect themselves from these impacts. The Coastal Protection Action Plan is a robust plan with 15 actions to protect our coastal way of life and safeguard people, homes, and communities. In developing the plan, we very deliberately grouped the actions into 3 focus areas: actions for property owners, actions for municipalities, and actions for the province. The reason for this is simple. We all have a role to play in making our coastal homes and communities resilient to climate change. To date, 10 of the 15 actions are complete, and I'm looking forward to sharing more details on each action as we get into our discussion. But before your questions begin, I would like to touch on a few key areas. First, Mr. Chair, the foundation of the Coastal Protection Plan is science. A multi-division team from Environment and Climate Change with credentials in climate change, geology, geomatics, data analysis, and so on, developed this plan and its tools. Nova Scotians can have confidence that this team of subject matter experts stands fully behind the plan. Mr. Chair, all Nova Scotians have a role in addressing climate change and making sure our communities are resilient. That includes our coastal communities and municipalities. The Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities, Clean Foundation, Climate Atlantic, the Insurance Bureau of Canada, Real Estate Commission, Nova Scotia Association of Realtors are all working with us to implement various actions in the plan. The plan also reflects the fact that municipal levels of government, and not the province, has regulatory jurisdiction for zoning, land use planning, and issuing permits. These municipal levers are how building and development decisions are made, whether that is how high a building can be or whether a piece of land is developed as residential, commercial, or industrial use. One of the most effective ways to protect coastal homes and communities is through climate-informed zoning, land use planning, and the building permit process. Critical importance of municipal expertise and jurisdiction for zoning and land use planning so that our communities are planned, designed, and built to be vibrant and safe cannot be overstated. In recognition of this, we have developed example land use bylaws for municipalities to use in regulating development along the coast, and we have provided $1.8 million in funding to the Federation of Municipalities over the last 18 months to support municipal leadership and action in applying the full extent of their jurisdiction. I want to thank the Federation of Municipalities for their leadership in helping us implement the Coastal Action Plan. Mr. Chair, Nova Scotia has 13,000 kilometers of coastline. Not every property, will be impacted in the same way by climate change. There are many variables that come into play to assess risk, whether it's geology of the property, how far and how high up one builds, the vegetation, and so on. Hard rocky areas with granite resist erosion, while soft areas erode easily. This is one reason why a one-size-fits-all approach to coastal development doesn't make sense. We have developed a number of tools that coastal property owners can use to assess their risk and then take appropriate action, whether they are planning to build or want to safeguard an existing structure. One of the mitigations we recommend is using nature. For example, plants and vegetation are an effective way to protect properties from erosion and flooding. I know this is an area you're interested in hearing more about today, and I look forward to our discussion on nature-based solutions. Mr. Chair, together, the province, the Federation of Municipalities, property owners, Clean Foundation, municipalities, and many others are doing great work to protect our communities and make sure they are strong and resilient to climate change impacts. Using science, data, and information from our respective areas of expertise, we can preserve our coastal way of life. So I'm looking forward to your questions today, which I'm sure will help make Nova Scotians learn more about coastal protection and what is being done to safeguard our coastal way of life. Thank you.
Thank you, and I now recognize Mr. Ryder-Burbidge, please.
Thank you very much. As I said, my name is Simon. I'm with the Ecology Action Centre. Many of you may know we're one of Atlantic Canada's oldest and largest environmental charities with a membership of more than 4,000 supporters in Nova Scotia and throughout Atlantic Canada. I will focus my remarks today in particular on an opportunity in front of us to advance a key component of the Coastal Protection Action Plan, that being coastal habitat restoration. These are the nearshore habitats that make our province go by supporting our fisheries and offering so many other benefits to coastal communities. From storm surge protection to water quality regulation, we're talking about eelgrass meadows, kelp reefs, salt marshes, oyster beds, etc. It won't surprise the committee, I'm sure, to hear that much of this habitat has been lost over the past decades. We're asking for your help to bring some of these places back to health. And today you'll hear several examples of the permitting challenges that demonstrate why we're keen to work with the committee on a right-sized and fit-for-purpose provincial approach to permitting coastal restoration projects. You're going to hear lots about eelgrass in particular today, but there are a number of coastal restoration concepts emerging throughout the globe beyond eelgrass. I'll talk about a few examples here. First, Virginia, where the restoration of nearly 9,000 acres of eelgrass meadows has taken place on their coast. You can look to Wales, where government-endorsed National Seagrass Action Plan outlines a long-term effort to halt the loss of existing seagrasses and restore additional acreage. You can look beyond eelgrass to New York City, where the Billion Oyster Project has restored more than 150 million oysters in the city's harbor, reestablishing lost habitat for marine life and improving water quality. You can look to California, where divers have been clearing the way for the return of wild kelp in areas previously overrun by sea urchins, and where the Department of Fish and Wildlife has developed a multi-year restoration and management plan for key kelp species there. Or you can look right here in Nova Scotia, where groups like Transcoastal Adaptations at SMU or CBWES and others have long been leaders in the restoration of salt marsh. So indeed, all of these potentials exist here. And as we work towards a more comprehensive understanding of eelgrass meadows and other coastal ecosystems in our province, what we are looking for now is a kind of era of experimentation. A time where we can let 1,000 flowers bloom, so to speak, and figure out to what extent the restoration of eelgrass meadows, kelp reefs, oyster beds, etc., can help us to stem the tide of marine biodiversity loss and climate change in our province, while also protecting our communities from the impacts of climate change at sea. The Coastal Protection Action Plan does some work to indicate support for coastal restoration projects already, and we're suggesting that permitting reform, addressing some of the issues that Meredith has already begun to raise, is the logical and indeed the necessary next step towards enabling landowners, municipalities, academic institutions, and civil society groups like ours to carry out, evaluate, and eventually scale these important projects. I'd like to point out a few reasons for why this could really provide benefit beyond the obvious marine biodiversity and carbon sequestration. One, a reduced burden on government staff, where a bespoke system for low risk and regenerative projects could offer clear direction to departments and project leads and limit a bureaucratic workload. A better service delivery, where less time spent by all parties on paperwork that is not quite fit for purpose would allow public servants to spend more time doing the important work that they do, and allow project leads to fire up their work more quickly. 3, improving the efficacy of government funds like the Sustainable Communities Challenge Fund, which is providing an important source of money for coastal restoration right now, where we could get more bang for buck with a permitting system that we could assure would not get groups would not get in the way of achieving coastal restoration objectives. And finally, employment opportunities, where municipalities and small businesses, nonprofit groups like ours, have a defined space within which to operate these projects. Jobs in coastal communities can follow. In closing, we're looking forward to working with the committee to ensure the better coordination within and across departments for different aspects of permitting, including clear guidance for government staff and applicants alike. Dedicated staff within departments with the knowledge and capacity to review coastal restoration projects, and the right-sized, fit-for-purpose approach that can ensure permitting process that is appropriately scaled to the potential impact of the project. And what we call a rigorous, not onerous, approach to environmental oversight, which recognizes the unique nature of these projects that are meant to restore habitat, while also ensuring that these efforts are not inadvertently causing harm. And finally, the continuation of a long-term vision for coastal restoration, including a collaborative and adaptive approach to the preservation and restoration of these coastal habitats. This can provide the basis for the next phases of the Coastal Protection Action Plan, which we understand was designed with a limited term in mind. In closing, coastal habitat restoration is really still in a nascent phase in many contexts, and we have a great opportunity here to take advantage of the expertise and infrastructure that is available to us in this province to become a leader in the nature-based solution space for our coast. And this is an easy step, hopefully, towards protecting ecosystems that can make, that can make Canada's ocean playground the beautiful and special place it is, and towards ensuring the health of these coastal habitats and coastal communities for generations to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I now recognize Dr. Boerder.
Thank you. As mentioned, I work as the lead scientist for the Community Eelgrass Restoration Initiative. It's a bit of a mouthful. And we work in close collaboration with the community, the Confederacy of Mainland Mi'kmaq. Our work largely focuses on researching and restoring eelgrass ecosystems around Nova Scotia. Eelgrass, for those who haven't heard me talk on that point excessively, is a marine plant that grows in shallow coastal waters and provides a range of benefits to us humans. It captures carbon, it protects our shorelines from erosion, it improves water quality, especially for growing seafood, and it offers important habitat for culturally and economically important species here in the Maritimes. That includes lobster, crabs, shellfish, flatfishes, and the American eel. But like many ecosystems, and as already mentioned, eelgrass is also declining. We therefore work to better understand it and restore it before it disappears, and it would be very costly to bring it back. We've been doing this work with communities around Nova Scotia for about 3 years now, and we have received overwhelming support from communities, landowners, and organizations across the province. However, unfortunately, our biggest hurdle in this work is not actually working in the oftentimes chilly coastal waters here in Nova Scotia, but rather obtaining permits from provincial departments such as the Department of Natural Resources and Renewables. This has led, as Meredith has already mentioned, to the cancellation of multiple community-based restoration projects. The main issue lies not in how the restoration is done itself, but how it is currently evaluated for permitting, using the same parameters as shoreline armoring and infrastructure development, for example. I think we can agree that the impact of these kind of projects is vastly different and to be considered on a different scale. When reviewing all the Coastal Protection Action Plan and the associated documents that have been mentioned, I was quite encouraged to see that adaptation and nature-based solutions are part of it, and indeed in the title of one of the documents. So safeguarding your coastal property and nature-based solutions for coastal property owners provide some great suggestions and also even feature visuals of what seems to be eelgrass along a healthy shoreline. They also point to environmental organizations that can help with shoreline restoration and protection. But looking at all of that, here's my concern. If organizations like the Community Eelgrass Restoration Initiative or the Confederacy of Mainland Mi'kmaq or the Ecology Action Center with the expertise, the time, and the funding face significant red tape in obtaining these permits, how can it be expected from individual landowners or community members to navigate this process? If ecosystem restoration is a key strategy for this climate adaptation that we're talking about, then I think streamlining permits should be part of the solution. To be clear, I'm not advocating for less oversight. I'm advocating for dedicated measures that make these goals achievable for citizens and organizations who want to do good work for Nova Scotia's shorelines. I acknowledge that this is a relatively new type of work and therefore not yet represented in current permitting processes. This is a problem recognized around the globe, and we even published a paper in scientific literature on this recently. However, I think this point in time also presents an opportunity to collaborate across departments and organizations and create better pathways forward. So these opportunities for streamlined permitting for conservation and restoration could include the following: dedicated staff in relevant departments to review restoration projects, and improved interdepartmental coordination. Greater involvement of non-governmental experts. For example, one could build on successful collaborations as are already in place with Climate Atlantic and the Clean Foundation. Right-sizing the permitting process to match the actual impact of restoration projects based on the presumption that restoration inherently is a positive activity. And lastly, the establishment of what can be considered innovation sandpits that provide easily permissible space to develop, test, and refine new restoration solutions. To conclude, we would like to help communities access and achieve meaningful restoration goals, and we want to help you deliver on them too. Streamlining permitting for conservation and restoration work is a practical step, I think, that can empower communities, organizations, and individuals across the province to contribute to healthier coastlines in various degrees. With the right support and collaboration, we can make it easier to do the right thing for Nova Scotia's marine environment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now we'll go to Dr. Tittensor, please.
Members of the committee, good afternoon, and thank you for the invitation to speak here to you. I have no doubt that as soon as I open my mouth, you can tell that I'm not from here. However, I'm fortunate enough to have lived here for several decades, and also fortunate to lead a research group that works to restore ecosystems along the beautiful coastline that this province is blessed with. In particular, as my colleague Dr. Boerder has described, we focus on restoring eelgrass meadows. These meadows are special because over and above their natural beauty, they directly benefit fisheries, help to store carbon, and help to prevent coastal erosion. The scientific literature on these benefits is extensive. For example, a study in Sweden estimated that over a multi-decade period, a hectare of eelgrass produces an extra 626 kilograms of cod and sequesters almost 100 more tons of carbon compared to an unvegetated habitat. Seagrass meadows can slow wave energy by up to 40%, acting as natural barriers to erosion. In fact, the future benefits per hectare associated with fishing, avoided climate change damage, erosion limitation, and water clarity have been estimated at over $20,000. Restoring eelgrass meadows directly benefits coastal communities and aligns with the goals of the Coastal Protection Action Plan. However, as you've heard from the previous speakers, we have faced undue difficulties with obtaining permits for this work, perhaps in part due to such restoration being a novel approach here, although it is well established in other parts of the world. While I do not doubt the good intentions of the provincial employees at the Department of Natural Resources and Renewables, by categorizing eelgrass meadows with other more intrusive activities in the permitting process, we are hampering our collective ability to restore the meadows on our doorstep and to bring back the benefits that they provide. The good news is that there is a solution, and one that would have tangible benefits, one that would increase efficiency and reduce costs to the taxpayer. By having a more streamlined permitting process for restoration efforts, we would save the time of government employees and researchers alike. It can be rare, in science as in life, to find the true wins that benefit all involved. Retaining the rigor but streamlining the permitting process for restoring eelgrass meadows and other coastal ecosystems around this province is one of those true wins. It represents an opportunity that, if we could align behind it, would benefit Nova Scotians, help work towards the goals of the Coastal Protection Action Plan, and further position this province to reap the benefits that restoration provides. As the Honourable Timothy Halman, Minister of Environment and Climate Change, said in his introduction to the future of Nova Scotia's coastline, in many ways, the ocean is the soul of our province. I couldn't agree more, and I hope that the members of the committee will recognise our shared connection to the ocean and our shared vision to sustain it now and into the future. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. So now we enter what we call the question and answer portion of our committee meeting. So what we do is it's 20 minutes for each caucus as we go around for the first round. I want to remind everyone that after the questions asked, that you wait for me to recognize you before you speak. That gives Ledge TV an opportunity to turn your mic on, so everything is recorded. So we'll start the first round of questioning with the NDP Caucus for 20 minutes. You recognize MLA Lachance.
Thank you very much. And thanks so much to everyone for being here. And I think you can hear the passion amongst all of you and share it amongst Nova Scotians. Nova Scotians care deeply about our province's coastlines and making sure they're protected. This was clear when the Coastal Protection Act passed in 2019 with all party support, but sadly this act was abandoned by the current government, and that's leaving development along the coastline with a patchwork approach. So my question is for the department. Has the department kept track of how many meters on average the Nova Scotia coastline has receded since the passage of the act originally in 2019?
I recognize Deputy Murphy.
Yes, thank you for the question. We don't have data on reseeding, but we do have lots of data in terms of our Coastal Protection Action Plan and the work that supports it. We know that 12.1% of our 13.1% of our coastline is protected, and that work continues.
I recognize MLA LaChance.
And now I'd actually like to turn to Dr. Tittensor. Right now, if nothing changes in terms of what the provincial government is doing, what will the future of coastal erosion look like in Nova Scotia?
I recognize Dr. Tittensor.
Thank you for the question. To some extent, this depends on the rate of carbon emissions around the world. But we can expect an acceleration of coastal erosion, an increase in sea level, and an intensity of extreme weather events, an intensifying of extreme weather events that will all align to accelerate the coastal erosion process. The magnitude and rapidity of these events is likely to be substantial, and the greater the rate of carbon emissions and the faster the rate of climate change, the more impacts we can expect around this province and indeed around the world.
I recognize MLA Gallagher.
Thank you, Chair. I have a few questions for Dr. Boerder. I'm learning so much about eelgrass. And what I've learned is that eelgrass has this ability to reduce the force of waves. Could you elaborate a bit about how eelgrass restoration projects would help us address coastal erosion?
I recognize Dr. Boerder.
Very good question indeed. So I think it can be likened to wind hitting a forest on land. We're all very familiar with using shrubs or trees as windbreaks around properties, around farms, and indeed, for example, farmers use that a lot. Can be considered the same for eelgrass along our coasts. Just by its sheer presence and the complexity of the habitat, so it's an underwater meadow with very, very dense and up to 2 meter long blades of grass. The energy of the waves and of the water hitting the coast is absorbed into these blades, into the soft sediment, instead of unmitigated hitting the shoreline. We're seeing that in a lot of areas where we have healthy coastal habitats, such as eelgrass, such as living shorelines, salt marshes, wetlands, this kind of energy gets absorbed much better than hitting a shoreline, for example, that has been hardened or armored. And indeed, a lot of the requests we're getting from local landowners, even from architects around the province, from people who have acquired coast property, is like, what can we do to protect our coastline that is compatible with natural goals, with climate change, and that has a lasting impact and does not need to be rebuilt or reconstructed every couple of years. And nature-based solutions is definitely one part of this portfolio.
I recognize MLA Gallagher.
So I can only assume that the eelgrass must be healthy in order to protect the coast. Can you elaborate?
Yes.
I recognize Dr. Boerder.
Yes, indeed. So healthy ecosystems are much more resilient to all kinds of disturbances. And of course, the healthier, the denser the meadow, the more it can provide these ecosystem services that are so valuable to us. And I think Dr. Tittensor has already made that point very eloquently, that with increasing impacts of climate change along our coasts, I think the importance of having these healthy ecosystems really increases exponentially too. And we've seen in a lot of areas around the world, for example, in the UK, what happens if we lose these ecosystems, and fisheries suffer, the coastlines suffer, biodiversity in the area goes down, water quality goes down. So that is why we think this work is so important to do now, while Nova Scotia still has incredible luxury, I would say, and to boast healthy eelgrass meadows.
I recognize MLA Gallagher.
Thank you, Chair. I have a few questions about your restoration projects. I'm curious how long does it take to get the projects approved in Nova Scotia?
I recognize Dr. Boerder.
So in the past, especially past year, some turnaround times were between 2 to 5 months for permits. There were a lot of issues around unclear expectations, around staff that was reviewing the permits who were not properly informed. I would like to make it clear that the direct staff we worked with, especially in the regional offices, were incredibly supportive. So this is more like a systemic issue than anything else. And every year, and I think it was mentioned by one of the speakers, we basically got presented with new hurdles that had not been present for permitting the years before, and that prevented timely permit application and review. And one of these was that sometimes we would be like at the bottom of the pile, more or less, and even requesting to have it expedited or pointing out that this is a fairly short and easy review. That didn't happen. So, yeah, that really prevented us from planting during the main planting season, which is June and July.
I recognize MLA Gallagher.
Dr. Boerder, you're on a really tight timeline, as I understand it as well. Could you talk a little bit more about that and why it's such a tight timeline?
I recognize Dr. Boerder.
Absolutely. So, as we all know, the waters are rather unpleasant in the winter years. So, really, our work starts around April, often when it's safe to go in the water. And that is when we can start to look around for the conditions in these coastal areas along the communities that have requested to work with us with regards to what is the underwater situation. So I mentioned eelgrass is a plant, so it doesn't behave the same each year. So sometimes after winter storms are heavy, some areas do better, some do worse. So we have to go and assess the situation before we can apply for permits in the respective areas. So we don't often know ahead in time when and where we were going to work. In addition, we have to work with the communities. We are building trust, we are talking with community members, we're building these relationships, which are an essential part of our community-led work. So this all takes time, and unfortunately the aligning of the permitting processes and this type of process does not often work in favor. We've been advised by DNR that the only thing that we can do is apply earlier, so that led us to basically make educated guesses where we want to work and then just put in a lot of permits. And each permit, I would like to point out, costs $80. And time to review, time to put together, so this seems a waste of everybody's time.
I recognize MLA Gallagher.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just being cautious of time, I'm curious what you need from the province to do your work, and if the changes aren't made, what will happen to your incredibly important eelgrass work?
I recognize Dr. Boerder.
Yeah, thank you. I think the changes that we're requesting I already mentioned during my opening remarks, so mostly the recognition that this is something that is beneficial for everybody. It's a win-win situation, I think, and that this is an inherently positive activity and does not need to be judged against the same standards and parameters as, for example, construction of a wharf or other activities such as aquaculture. So recognizing that, I think, is a first step, and also really sitting down with us to talk. We have been trying for nearly 2 years to get a meeting with the minister. We have heard very little back, so really opening these talks and being able to talk to elected representatives is a great help.
I recognize MLA Gallagher.
So hearing that information, my question for the department is, given the benefits of eelgrass to the environment, will you take this information back to your government colleagues to find a solution?
I recognize Deputy Murphy.
Yes, thank you for the question, and certainly we welcome all feedback, and we'll take the information back. Government has been really clear that its priority is to make our permitting more efficient across government. and that's within environment and climate change, certainly something that we've been focused on the last number of months, and there have been many announcements about how we've been doing that. The permits that you're talking about relate to the Department of Natural Resources, and I know they're taking the same steps as well to make their permitting system more efficient. And so that work is a focus, and certainly we appreciate the feedback that we receive from the witnesses here today. Also, just want to take the time to note that. And I appreciate the comments from one of the other witnesses about our nature-based solution guide. We were really pleased to work with Clean Foundation and others on that. And that guide outlines nature-based solutions that Nova Scotians can take on their own property without permits, when working above the high water mark. And so we were pleased to provide those supports as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I recognize MLA Gallagher.
Thank you. Just back to Dr. Boerder for a moment. I've read that you are snorkeling around Owl's Head and found some of the healthiest eelgrass meadows in the province. What do you think contributes to the health of the eelgrass around Owl's Head?
I recognize Dr. Boerder.
Yeah, gorgeous eelgrass out there, and I invite everybody to go snorkeling in eelgrass and, as I say, touch grass. The main thing up on the eastern shore is where the vast majority of the healthy eelgrass still is located, is that it's fairly untouched. So fairly low population density, low infrastructures along the coast, and limited changes to the coastline. So we've been working in Owl's Head, Little Harbour, for the past 5 years. And I'm actually sad to say that one of the 2 meadows we've been working there has disappeared completely. So we are working to restore that one. Presumably storms were the issue. And this is really reflecting something that we're seeing along the shorelines and hearing from a lot of people around Nova Scotia.
Thank you. I recognize MLA Gallagher.
So thank you. Back to the department for a minute. Right now, about 13% of Nova Scotia's coastline is inside protected areas. We've increasingly been hearing about potential private developments in the West Mabou Beach area, Provincial Park. Does your department have a position on making sure this coastline stays within the protected areas?
Questions about Mabou Beach?
Sorry, I recognize Deputy Murphy.
Yes, thank you. Hopefully that I don't make that mistake again. So a question about West Mabou Beach, which is a provincial park, should go to the Department of Natural Resources.
I recognize MLA LaChance.
Well, maybe I'll just start with a question that I do believe is in the purview of environment and climate change. So, we have targets around protection of land and waters that were mandated within ECRA. And of course, we have a goal to reach 20% by 2030, which is lower than in a lot of other jurisdictions, and which is reflective of the relatively small amount of public land in our province. But we also had an interim goal of 15% by March 2026. Are we on track to meet this goal?
I recognize Deputy Murphy.
Thank you. Yes, we're working hard on that goal. As the minister noted last week, government has continued to be committed to that goal, and at the same time, developing our natural resources and supporting growth of our economy. And so that work continues, and certainly. That work doesn't just happen within the department; it also happens with our partners. We were really pleased, I believe it was last week or the week before, to see the Nova Scotia Nature Trust make an announcement where they had protected land down in the La Have area, and so that certainly contributes towards the progress of meeting our goals.
I recognize MLA LaChance.
And I have some questions for the Confederacy of Mainland Mi'kmaq. So two-eyed seeing is an approach that embraces the benefits of using multiple perspectives, specifically Mi'kmaq perspectives and more sort of traditional based science perspectives, to truly understand what's going on. Can you speak to how two-eyed seeing is being used in the work around eelgrass restoration?
I recognize Ms. Ferrier.
Thank you for your question. We use eduaptamunk or two-eyed seeing for eelgrass restoration by working with Mi'kmaq communities for learning more about the species within their communities. So where it's located, how it's changed over the years, what conditions it's currently in, historically in, maybe like traditional uses of the species or species that use the eelgrass meadows. And we also hold knowledge sharing sessions where we will share what we know about eelgrass, and in turn, elders and other knowledge holders from communities will also share with us just traditional knowledge around the species or the culturally significant species that use the meadows.
Thank you. I recognize MLA LaChance.
Do you feel like the current government seeks out the expertise of the Confederacy of Mainland Mi'kmaq in nature-based solutions for climate change?
I recognize Ms. Karcz.
Yes, so I will acknowledge that CMM is sort of new on the scene when it comes to nature-based solutions. I think we are actively starting to work more and more with university partners like CIRI or the Foam Lab at Dalhousie, as well as Transcoastal Adaptations from St. Mary's University. I think I noticed in some of the documents that were in this reference package, specifically I can't remember the title of it now, but the act of, I think you know the one I'm talking about, not this one right here, yeah. The Environmental Goals and Climate Change Reduction Act. One of the key principles guiding the act is Nadugalam, and then I know in at least a couple of the other climate change plans, they reference Nadugalam as well as Aduaptamunk. Aduaptamunk being two-eyed seeing, and Nadugalam being the Mi'kmaq word for the wonderful and amazing concept that I think a lot of us who are non-Indigenous also can understand, where we're trying to protect and live in a way that leaves the earth healthy and better for future generations. And I think, to answer your specific question, CMM is still coming into the space where we can offer that expertise, but no, I think at this point it's also important to recognize that the CMM is an organization that serves and supports Mi'kmaq communities, and we welcome people coming to us for our technical expertise, which we are actively working on. But what we would really hope is that the government go directly to community or bring us in when they go directly to community, because as Kelly has said, we are working with community to use their knowledge. They are the knowledge holders as well. We also have many knowledge holders that work with us, but the point of CMM is to serve community and make sure that two-eyed seeing or Aduaptamunk is happening. So we welcome, of course, the current government and the various departments to come to us, but what we really want is to support direct communication and direct work with our communities, and that can definitely be improved. Yes.
Thank you. I recognize MLA LaChance with 23 seconds.
I mean, this might be something you can pick up on in future discussion, but how could that be improved? How could the connection between CMM and Mi'kmaq communities and the government be improved? And I can leave that.
I recognize Ms. Karcz with 2 seconds. I'm sorry. I apologize. I have to call order. I just want to say that before we move to the Liberal caucus. I should have said that in the beginning. If I have to call order when the time's up, so I apologize in advance if I cut somebody off. I also need to apologize. This is my first day of chairing this particular committee, and I didn't fully understand the timing issue, and so. for a lot of things. So I need to say that the Liberal Caucus has 10 minutes. I recognize MLA Rankin.
Thank you, and thank you all for being here. I won't do too many thank yous because I don't have much time, but certainly respect all of your work and worked with some of you in the past, and it's super important. But I do want to talk about the land protection goals, which have been passed in legislation. And I want to start by asking what the current status of those protected lands are. What's the percentage protected now? And how much more land will be required to be protected in hectares to reach the 20%? And who is the lead department on that work?
I recognize Deputy Murphy.
Yes, thank you for the question. In terms of lead department, we work collaboratively with the Department of Natural Resources, so that both departments are working together on that goal. In terms of progress, approximately 13.75% of the province is currently protected. And if you strictly look at the coastline, we're at about 13.1%. How that translates into hectares, I'd have to get back to you. Sorry.
I recognize the Honourable MLA the Honourable MLA Rankin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And we have a long way to go. It's over 300,000 hectares if you look at the approximate land for 1% in the province being 55,000, and the figure that you just gave at 13.7%. So we've protected less than 1% over the last 4 years. And there was a lot more progress before that with previous work of different ministers. And I ask who the lead is because your answer on West Mabo Beach, that natural resource would be answering questions. Yet this legislation that was very well celebrated by the government was passed by your department. This is your law that you have to make sure that happens. So what is the role for environment with discussions around current protected areas in the province? And has there been any formal or informal direction to consider or reconsider the protection of West Mabo Beach?
I recognize Deputy Murphy.
Thank you. Yeah, the 20% goal is included in the Environmental Goals and Climate Change Reduction Act that the government passed in 2021. In terms of work on that goal, yes, it is collaborative with Department of Natural Resources and Renewables, and we work together to release a collaborative protected areas strategy. When that strategy was launched, there were certainly additional protected areas that were announced at that time. In terms of protection, some land is protected under the Department of Environment and Climate Change's legislation, including the Wilderness Area Protection Act, and that would be wilderness areas, and then nature reserves under the Special Places Protection Act. Provincial parks, on the other hand, however, are protected under the act that belongs to natural resources, and so parks are under their jurisdiction.
I recognize MLA Rankin.
Yeah, and respectfully, does the Minister of Environment not have to sign off on new designations as a co-signer with the other minister that is the lead on provincial parks, or is there something that has changed there? And if he does have to sign off, he or she being the Minister of Environment, don't you think that there is an obligation to speak about any potential of new land being protected or being unprotected?
I recognize Deputy Murphy.
Yeah, the decisions related to parks rest with natural resources or renewables, so you would need to follow up with them for any questions about that, and those are decisions of Executive Council.
I recognize MLA Rankin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And given that environment still is the lead and there would have to be some kind of process, what kind of public consultation or legislative steps would be required before any change in the status of protection areas like like West Mabo Beach or any other area that happens to be on the coastline.
I recognize.
Again, natural resources would have to speak to what consultation occurs in relation to parks.
I recognize MLA Rankin. I recognize MLA Rankin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Then from a professional environmental standpoint, what would be your advice be to government about consequences to our ecosystems, some of the most rare ecosystems along the coastline that have been talked about already, if there were to be any removal of protection from any land along the coast?
I recognize Deputy Murphy.
Well, we're focused on working towards the goals in the Environmental Goals and Climate Change Reduction Act, and that does include conservation goals, and it also includes our Coastal Protection Action Plan, which is what we're here to discuss today, and that work continues. As I mentioned earlier, we were pleased to see the conservation announcement by the land trusts last week down in La Have, and we continue to work towards our conservation goals generally.
I recognize MLA Rankin.
Okay, so we're here to talk about coastal protection and all of the focus on ensuring that we have, appropriate protection on the coast. And what is the percentage now of privately owned land? You referenced how much is protected, but in 2019, 87% of our province was privately owned along the coast. So presumably you're tracking that very closely. Is the provincial government tracking shoreline development? Or is this something you're leaving entirely up to municipalities? Are you watching the development along the coastline, and is it getting higher than 87%, which is a higher percentage of land that is private than we have in the province, which is about 65–70%. So it's even more dire, and it's even more sensitive ecosystems.
I recognize Deputy Murphy.
Yeah, so our Coastal Protection Action Plan has a number of themes. Including, providing Nova Scotians with the access to information so they can make good decisions. And of course, it also includes a theme around supporting municipal leadership. Municipalities are leaders when it comes to land use planning, when it comes to zoning, when it comes to permitting. And so our action plan is really focused on supporting municipalities so they can continue to do that good work. And continue with their leadership. There are a number of actions in our plan that support that leadership, including providing example bylaw content so that they can do their work to regulate the coast. We've also provided financial resources to support the Federation of Municipality as they work with their members to advance that important work.
I recognize MLA Rankin.
Yeah, thank you. And you did mention that the plan reflects the fact municipal level government and not the province has regulatory jurisdiction for zoning. And this was the reason given why the coastal action legislation was scrapped. So if a municipality wants to have more ecologically appropriate setbacks, if they're proposing, changing from, say, 20 meters to 30 meters, what is the role of Nova Scotia Environment to make sure that they're able to do that?
I recognize Deputy Murphy.
Yeah, so we have 13,000 kilometers of coastline. And it's varied and all unique. And that's why we recognize that the role of municipalities and their leadership in zoning, in land use planning, and so on. They know best, what's needed in their communities. So what we've done is we've developed, working with the Federation of Municipalities, is develop example land use bylaw content that municipalities can adopt to their particular circumstances. And that example content, bylaw content, talks about things like setbacks that you mentioned, minimum building elevations, and so on. And so, the municipal role in that really is to take those example bylaws and adapt them to their particular circumstance to do what's best for their communities. Not only are we supporting them with those example bylaw content, we're also providing funding to the Federation of Municipalities so that they can support municipalities to do that work.
Order. Order. We now move to the PC caucus with 30 minutes, and I'll begin with recognizing MLA McQuarrie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all of the people that came here to share your expertise. I really appreciate you being here. My first question is for Department of Environment and Climate Change. Can you give us an update on the floodline mapping and how much of the province is currently mapped?
I recognize Deputy Murphy.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Excuse me, thank you for the question. Floodline mapping is another way that we're supporting municipalities through our Coastal Protection Action Plan. I should add, floodline mapping is led by the Department of Municipal Affairs, and so they certainly would be able to speak to it at a much deeper level than I, but I can provide an update on the progress of that work. Government has invested $9.8 million to support floodline mapping, and what this entails is detailed high-resolution mapping around flooding, both along the coast and as well as inland. And what this information will do and is doing is supporting municipalities to exercise their role in terms of land use planning and making decisions about where building can happen, where development can happen safely. In terms of the status of that work, Municipal Affairs is making good progress, and they're on track. Approximately 50% of the province is mapped so far. We're anticipating that by the end of March of 2026, approximately 75% of the province will be mapped. And by the end of March 2027, that work will be complete. And the municipalities will have in their hands really rich information that they can use to regulate, to regulate development within their jurisdiction. In terms of the floodline mapping along the coast, the entire Bay of Fundy has been mapped, the Northumberland Shore, and the Atlantic coast from Ecom-Secom to Antigonish. So there's really good progress happening on floodline mapping, and that'll be a tremendous resource for municipalities going forward. Thank you.
I recognize MLA McQuarrie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Murphy. I heard that you supported the town of Pictou via the Community Climate Capacity Program to undertake work to protect the town from coastal flooding and erosion. And I know you also did Port Hawkesbury in my constituency. Can you tell us more about that program and Pictou's project? How can other communities benefit from the CCC program?
I recognize Deputy Murphy.
The CCC program, which is the Community Climate Capacity Program, was launched in 2023. It's a program that is providing capacity to municipalities, to community groups, to Mi'kmaq groups and others. This program recognizes that while funding is very, very useful for municipalities and community groups, sometimes they just need actual technical capacity. Not all municipalities have climate staff as members of their team. And so we've provided funding to the Clean Foundation, who've been a great partner, and they're delivering that program. And so what they do is they provide access to experts, to municipalities and others who are participating in that program, and they help them develop projects. They help them scope out their projects. They help them develop funding applications, and so on. And so they've done that work with the town of Pictou as well, and it's a great example of a community showing leadership around coastal protection in Nova Scotia. And so some of the work that Pictou has done is, they've done work on their breakwater to better protect their coastline. They've elevated Calla Avenue, which is a street that runs next to the sea through that town. They've upgraded some of their stormwater infrastructure, and they're doing all of this to make their community more climate resilient, and better positioning their town for more development. And so in taking that work on, they're both adapting to climate change. They're making their community more resilient, and preparing for the future growth that I know they want to develop.
I recognize MLA Macquarie.
Thank you. And today's topic is Coastal Protection Action Plan, and we seem to be moving on and off topic a little bit. And I'm just going to take a little liberty here to move a little bit off topic, still be related, and because we have a lot of great work going on. And I just want to thank you for your work on eelgrass. It's very impressive. The government definitely supports that type of work. And recently, we've just introduced legislation. It was nicknamed the Red Tape Reduction Act to increase the efficiency of permitting. And I'm just wondering, maybe I can ask Ms. Ferrier, Miss Ferrier, or anybody, but I ask you because you and Ms. Karcz seem to be intimately involved with the actual projects. I'm seeing you in the water with the grass. So I'm asking you, are you aware of the red tape reduction that we're currently undertaking? And if so, do you see it helping what you're doing?
I recognize Ms. Karcz.
Simon might be able, or Kristina might be able to better speak to that. I am sort of oversee our coastal ecosystems team. Kelly is more definitely on the ground, but it's actually Kristina's team that applies for the permits. Not to put either of you on the spot, but I don't think we can speak to that as much.
I recognize Mr. Ryder-Burbidge. Thank you, sir.
Ryder-Burbidge, yeah.
Ryder-Burbidge.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So in general terms, this is a place where some streamlining of the kind that the red tape review has done in other places would be very appropriate. I have not had a direct encounter with the permitting process myself, so I won't speak to the details. We can possibly pass that one on. But in general, I think the idea is that we have a square peg in a round hole, a classic square peg round hole situation where we're trying to treat sort of small scale, low risk, nature-based solution projects into existing permitting processes that are meant for other types of projects that are likely to carry a higher risk of environmental impact. So I think it's just kind of remembering that a lot of these permitting processes were set up in many cases to protect the environment, and that this is kind of a special class of projects that should be recognized for its unique nature in helping to restore those ecosystems. So I would say in general terms, taking a look at the current landscape of permitting and the current interplay between departments and governments would be a great first step, figuring out how we could make this process easier for basically everybody involved, especially applicants, but also landowners, municipalities, and everybody that the province is looking to support in the adoption of these type of projects.
I recognize MLA Macquarie.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Yeah. And thank you, Mr. Ryder-Burbidge. Ms. Karcz, you had mentioned Nedukulunk, and I wonder if you could describe the way that the balance is played for sustainability in Nedukulumk, especially the economic drivers that are also included with that sustainability.
I recognize Ms. Karcz.
Yes, I just have a clarifying question. It's a pretty broad question. What's the context of your question? Like in balancing sustainability, in what way?
I recognize the MLA Macquarie.
Just in the fundamentals of Nedukulumk, the way that the broad range of interactions with the environment, and in particular, I know one aspect of that is balancing economic activities with the land and balancing that with environmental protection and the free use of the land, things like that.
I recognize Ms. Karcz.
Yes, I can definitely try my best. My understanding of Nedukulumk, as shared with me and taught to me by my Mi'kmaq coworkers and friends, is that Nedukulumk means taking just what you need, and only what you need for yourself, or maybe for your mother, for your aunt, for your family members. And so I think when you apply that, and then of course leaving what you don't need and not taking more than is excessive. As you said, the title of this meeting is the Coastal Protection Action Plan, and the tagline of that plan includes protecting nature, people, and homes. So it's really important. Also, in the quote that I cited from the Act, we're talking about integrating sustainability, economic development, and I believe social justice. That's not quite the right word. But Nedukulumk means balancing, and I think what's happening here, without getting too out of my scope, is that the Coastal Protection Action Plan has 15 action items, and none of the action I want to be careful with my words. Some of the action items, most of the action items are about protecting homes and people. And I think we would like to help in this specific area with permitting, but in general, there needs to be a bigger commitment towards, I think in the eyes of CMM, I can't, trying to be careful to not speak only on behalf of myself, but we would like to work with you, and communities would like to work with the current government to see a better balance for protecting nature as well. So right now, if we were to use two-eyed seeing and consider things from a Mi'kmaq and Indigenous lens, Nedukulumk in this action plan could be said to be lacking, because there is a lot of protection and a lot of responsibility being put on municipalities, individual landowners, that is optional, not mandatory. This action plan does not require municipalities to take any of the content provided from the department. That's completely optional. And so I would say that when you're speaking and asking me about Nedukulumk, I would say that what it means is it reminds us to take what's only necessary, and that we have to balance, yes, of course, economic growth. And I think, as we've been trying to highlight today, there are so many economic benefits and reasons to do this coastal restoration and this remediation and this wonderful work. There are direct economic benefits. Yeah, but I think I'm rambling a little bit. Hopefully that helped us answer your question.
Thank you. I recognize, who's next? I recognize MLA Wong.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you all for being here. Again, it's an education for me as well, especially around the eelgrass. I want to direct my first question to Dr. Tittensor, and with reference to MLA Lachance's question, one of their first questions to you, in that it was referred around the Unproclaimed Coastal Protection Act, and the question was phrased, and I'm paraphrasing, was around what would happen to our coastline given the patchwork approach of this government's plan. So your response to that was a very generic response, I thought, around what would happen to our coastlines around the world if we did absolutely nothing. So with reference to the patchwork approach, could you maybe indicate which one of the 15 items in the action plan that you would consider a patchwork approach?
I recognize Dr. Tittensor.
I'm sorry, I didn't refer to a patchwork approach, so I'm not quite sure where that language came from.
I recognize the Honourable MLA Wong.
Thank you, Chair. It came from the question that was directed towards you from MLA LaChance, where it was referred to as the patchwork approach by this government, and then you answered the question. So I was just curious as to which items that you were referring to as patchwork, perhaps patchwork approach, or maybe you didn't understand the question.
I call order. Recognize MLA LaChance.
Point of order. I would like to have that transcript made available to us now where I used the word patchwork.
So we'll continue on with questioning. Chief Clerk, Committee Clerk is checking with the answer there right now. Okay. Please, yes, go ahead. MLA LaChance.
Could, in the absence of clarifying that as a direct quote, could I ask the Honourable MLA to rephrase their question?
I think I'll move on to another question until we get that phrasing, and then we'll come back to that. Yeah. So I recognize MLA Wong.
Thank you, Chair, and I will await the clarification on that. My next question would be towards the Department of Environment and Climate Change. When I was perusing your website in preparation for this meeting, I did notice that there was a video on there around green realtors, which I had really never heard of before. So could you explain a little bit for everyone what a green realtor is and how we communicate with our realtors around the province in order to ensure and protect potential property buyers?
I recognize Deputy Murphy.
Yes, thank you. One of the actions in our Coastal Protection Action Plan is about supporting realtors and their role. And one of the outcomes of that work is really a new partnership with realtors. We've been working with both the Real Estate Association, which represents realtors, and we've been working with the Real Estate Commission, which is the regulatory body for realtors. And through those engagements, we've come to meet with green realtors. Green realtors are realtors who have an understanding and appreciation for climate change and the need to be thinking about climate change when Nova Scotians are buying and selling properties. Buying or selling a property is, one of the most significant investment that most of us will make, and we want to support Nova Scotians as they take those steps. So we've worked with realtors on a number of different tools. We worked together with the association on an educational video. And that video is an educational tool for realtors so that you know, they're aware of climate change, they're aware of you know, flooding risks, you know, so that they can better support their clients, and you know, as they want to develop their properties or buy and sell their properties. We've also worked with the association and developed together a checklist. And that's a checklist that realtors can use with their clients, so that clients can be thinking about these things, you know, as they're buying and selling properties. And then we've also been working with the Nova Scotia Real Estate Commission, the regulatory body that I mentioned. So you know, anyone who's bought or sold a house will probably remember that in the middle of that process there was a property disclosure statement, you know, where the selling property discloses to the buyer any potential issues with the home or property. So we worked with the commission to amend that document, and they've added content to the document that provides for the disclosure of coastal risks, coastal erosion, coastal flooding, or any steps that have been taken to improve the property to make it safer from coastal erosion or coastal flooding. So that's a you know, a group that we hadn't worked with much before, and we're certainly pleased to, as part of this Coastal Protection Action Plan, so that you know, we can support Nova Scotians when they're buying and selling homes. Thank you.
Before I recognize MLA Wong, the question on with answered can't be answered today. We will table that at a future meeting. Apologize for that, but that's what we've determined to be the best path forward. I recognize MLA Van Exen.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you all for being here and for your presentations. It's truly appreciated, and I too am learning a lot. So, I wanted to jump in and ask if you could tell me more about the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities' work to help advance the action plan.
I recognize Deputy Minister Murphy.
Thank you. As noted previously, supporting municipal leadership is one of the key themes of our Coastal Protection Action Plan, and we've been working very closely with the Federation to do just that. Shortly after launching the Coastal Protection Action Plan, the Federation of Municipalities you know, let us know that they could use staffing resources to support municipalities and coordinate municipalities when it came to coastal protection issues. So we provided funding support to the Federation so that they were able to put a coordinator position in place for a 3-year period. And so that coordinator is, you know, they're available to municipalities to support municipalities as they do their work. As we continue to implement our Coastal Protection Action Plan, one of our actions was to develop example bylaw content, and so I mentioned that previously. And so we collaborated with the Federation of the Municipalities, in developing that work, and eventually rolling out that work. As that work was implemented, you know, the Federation shared the need for resources to support municipalities in implementing it, and so the Minister announced last spring support of $1 million to municipalities to help them with adopting those example bylaw content. So as you can see, we've had lots of engagement and support from the Federation of Municipalities. Another area that I'll mention that haven't mentioned yet is the Sustainable Communities Challenge Fund. And so that's a program that the Federation is administering on behalf of the province. And that's a $30 million fund that supports municipalities, community groups with climate change related projects, including coastal protection projects. Government initially invested $15 million in that program. It was quite popular, so it was topped up to $30 million. And so the Federation of Municipalities, they continue to administer that. There have been many, many great projects, including coastal projects, that have been funded by that program. And SFM has rolled out that program in multiple funding rounds. They're on the third round now, and coastal protection projects were prioritized, or are being prioritized as part of that third round. So we're very happy to work with the Federation as a partner and supporting them and municipalities and their leadership in this area. Thank you.
Thank you. I recognize MLA Van Exen.
Well, thank you. And can you break down the Municipal Climate Learning Group and other initiatives like Community of Practice and the Partners Summit? And what are the goals with these initiatives?
I recognize Deputy Minister Murphy.
Sure, I'll start off, and then I'll pass over to my colleague to complete that answer. So the Municipal Climate Learning Group is part of the Community Climate Capacity Program that I mentioned earlier. It's another way that we're supporting municipalities and communities. And my colleague here, Executive Director of the Climate Change Team, is familiar with that program, and I'll pass it over to her to share additional details, if that's okay, Mr. Chair.
I recognize Ms. Skaine.
Thank you. Yeah, so Andrew mentioned our Community Climate Capacity Program. So the Municipal Learning Group is actually an extension of our Community Climate Capacity Group. And there's Clean Foundation who run this program on our behalf. They do provide a lot of resources for communities, municipalities, and First Nations groups that are involved in that. And through that Community Climate Capacity Program, they offer a community of practice, which is really a avenue for the participants within that team to get together and discuss projects specific to building more climate resilient communities. There would be things like access to funding, planning and designing of projects. And so in those community of practice meetings, if there's say a topic that's more broad. For example, I think they held one on our Sustainable Communities Challenge Fund. Then in those cases, the Municipal Learning Group participants, they would be asked to join those groups just to gather more information. Yep. And through the Municipal Learning Group, there's also Climate Learning Group, there's also things like a resource library that is available to them. And the Clean Foundation also sets up basically like a Q&A, drop-in sessions where they can just call and ask questions. Those are our virtual meetings. I think there were 16 that were held, 16 sessions that were held for that group in 2024. And yeah, and so really this is just an opportunity to build more climate resiliency in communities through all the municipalities. And that Municipal Climate Learning Group is open to all municipalities and elected officials across the province. And they would also be able to attend the yearly summit that's put on by Clean Foundation, where all the participants from both programs would be able to come together and just celebrate successes and really share information on how they're helping to move the Coastal Protection Action Plan forward.
Thank you. I recognize MLA Van Exen with 1 minute and 30 seconds.
Okay. Can you explain how the example bylaws and the $1.3 million in funding for municipality provides more flexibility and local control than a one-size-fits-all provincial regulation would have?
I recognize Deputy Minister Murphy.
Yes, thank you. As mentioned previously, Nova Scotia's coastline is varied. There's 13,000 kilometers of coastline. It's all different. Cape Breton Highlands are different from the Bay of Fundy, which is different from the Northumberland Strait and different from the South Shore. And you simply can't regulate that kind of variety of coastline from Halifax. And so, we recognize the key leadership that municipalities have in regulating development in planning, in implementing bylaws. And so, the work that we've done is really to support those municipalities in expressing that leadership. I outlined earlier the example bylaw content that was drafted. We did that in partnership with the Federation of Municipalities, and we're supporting them to help municipalities in implementing that work. I also mentioned that we provided funding to the Federation of Municipalities, and they're using that funding to help municipalities do that work.
Order. The time for the initial round of questioning has expired. We move to the second round. I'll recognize NDP with MLA LaChance in 4 minutes.
Great, thank you. Just to keep talking about the municipalities and guidelines and bylaws, I mean, my memory of the discussion and debate around the Coastal Protection Act was that, I mean, the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities, as well as a huge number, the majority of other municipalities, wrote in their support for having the Coastal Protection Act, that in fact they didn't want this to go municipality by municipality, that regardless of the diversity of our coastline, they recognized that there was a need for provincial leadership on this, and and so I mean, that's my memory. I think that's the case. So how many municipalities have implemented coastal protection bylaws since the province walked away from the Coastal Protection Act?
My apologies. I didn't have my mic on, so you didn't get yours on. I recognize Deputy Murphy.
Thank you. Yeah, a lot has changed in the last number of years, we're certainly seeing a changing climate. We're seeing increased need for development. And we're seeing all of that happen. Government heard from many different sources, and I think as we dug into this issue, as I've already mentioned, it became clear that a one-size-fits-all approach just wasn't going to work, and that's why we developed the Coastal Protection Action Plan to support Nova Scotians with the information they need, and support municipalities in expressing their leadership. There have been municipalities.
Order. The MLA would like to move on with minute 36.
Thank you, and I apologize if you were about to say this, but I was specifically asking: is there a municipality who has implemented coastal protection bylaws?
I recognize the Deputy Minister Murphy.
Yeah, there are various municipalities, with various levels of bylaws. Certainly, the example many are familiar with, I think, are the municipality of the District of Lunenburg. They've put in place coastal protection bylaws. The example bylaw content that the province has drafted just came out in the spring, in April, and so we're seeing that there's lots of interest in that. The funding that was provided to NSFM as well was provided in April, and I know they're planning to release information soon to municipalities on how they can support municipalities that want to do that work. And so that work will continue.
I recognize MLA LaChance, 22 seconds.
And, I guess I'm just wondering, we have seen sample projects around the province, Little Crescent Beach, for instance, there was a development where there's an infilling of a salt marsh, encroachment on public beach. And does the department believe...
Order.
Sorry.
Order. I will move on to the Liberal caucus with 4 minutes. I recognize MLA Rankin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so I want to talk about the interim target because that's coming up soon on protected areas. So specific to the interim target, which is March 2026, we are 5 months away, and the province needs to protect more than 60,000 hectares. And just to give Nova Scotians a glimpse of what that is, that's larger than the Kedgie Park, which is about 40,000 hectares. So in 5 months, the department has to do the work that it did not do in the last almost 5 years to bring to the cabinet to get approved. So I did notice that when the minister was asked where this work was, because we're getting so close, he mentioned that cabinet will ultimately decide, and we're continuing to do the work. But I think Nova Scotians do deserve clarity on how much the department is ready to protect this land. So is the department ready to protect land? Is there a batch ready to go of over 60,000 hectares approximately to catch up on the work that's required to meet the interim target so that the federal money can be unlocked and that we can continue to at least have a chance, an outside chance of reaching 20% by 2030?
I recognize Deputy Minister Murphy.
Yeah, certainly any new protections, when they're ready, that information is shared. As the minister mentioned last week, you mentioned that the government is committed to those targets, and at the same time, committed to development and economic development is always a consideration when we're looking at protecting land, but certainly there's an increasing, it's an increasing consideration as these decisions are made. That work is not due to be complete until 2026, and so that work continues.
I recognize MLA Rankin.
So given that economic considerations are more important now, is there less of a chance that that target will actually be met in March, in your view?
Recognize Deputy Minister Murphy.
Yeah, I don't want to speculate on what will or won't be met. I think the minister said last week that he remains committed to the target, and at the same time, developing our economy as well.
I recognize MLA Rankin with minute 12.
And in terms of, because the work is so onerous in terms of getting everything together, consultation, how has the budgeting dedicated to this work evolved or changed over the last number of years, and the staff levels within the Parks and Protected Areas branch since the 20% target was established?
I recognize Deputy Murphy with 44 seconds.
Yeah, the specific staffing levels within that particular branch, I can't speak to. I'm not aware of any particular changes. That's all laid out in the budget process year to year. And then in terms of continuing to implement the nature agreement, that work continues as well.
I recognize MLA Rankin with 8 seconds.
Thank you for all your work that you do. Appreciate it. Just doing my job.
Order. We now move to the PC caucus with 8 minutes, and I recognize MLA Bowlby.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. Question perhaps to Mr. Murphy. Could you explain the Coastal Adaptation Toolkit, its intent, and how communities can use that?
I recognize Deputy Minister Murphy.
Thank you. So that toolkit was developed by Climate Atlantic. Climate Atlantic is an Atlantic organization that we fund together with the other Atlantic provinces and the federal government. The Climate Atlantic, it's very much a data-driven organization. focused on climate change. They're highlighted in our Coastal Protection Action Plan as an organization that are uniquely positioned to help with the implementation of this action plan and providing Nova Scotians with the information they need to make good decisions. And so they've produced a number of tools. One is the toolkit that you mentioned. It's a toolkit that it actually nicely complements our coastal hazard map, which I haven't mentioned yet. We have a fantastic map that predicts flooding, both current day in the year 2050 and the year 2100. This toolkit, for Nova Scotians who are concerned about flooding risks or become aware of it because of our coastal hazard map, Climate Atlantic has produced this coastal adaptation toolkit, which individual Nova Scotians as well as community groups can use to assess their properties and assess what options they might have to live safely along the coast. The toolkit is a bit of a decision tree. Anyone using the toolkit can ask a series of questions and lead you to options for how an individual or a group can better protect their property. So it's just another example of a tool that we're supporting to implement our Coastal Protection Action Plan. Thank you.
Thank you. I recognize MLA Bowlby.
Thank you. Can you expand on how the erosion risk assessment aerial video work will contribute to better coastal planning?
I recognize Deputy Murphy.
Yeah, thank you. There's a number of things that we're doing around erosion risk. So, as has been, as I've mentioned previously, we have a Coastal Protection Action Plan with 15 actions. 10 of those actions are complete, and there are a few that are still in progress. The erosion mapping tool is one of the ones that are still in progress. That's a tool that will provide municipalities with information about erosion risk that they can use to, inform their decisions around land use planning and land use bylaws. And so that's work that's still to come. Some work that we've already completed when it comes to erosion risk relates to that coastal hazard map that I mentioned a moment ago. So we do have a coastal hazard map. It predicts future flooding. Nova Scotians can go online and find information for their property or any property. Anyone wanting additional information can ask for a coastal hazard assessment report, which Clean Foundation will produce. Clean Foundation have been delivering this to Nova Scotians. And within that report, it will provide a customized information on not only flooding risks, but erosion risks as well. Provides information to predict how much erosion a particular property might experience in the next, I believe it's 100 years, and suggest potential setbacks that Nova Scotians might consider if they're considering developing their property. So these are just a couple of things that we're doing around erosion to support Nova Scotians. Thank you.
I recognize MLA Bowlby.
How much time?
3 minutes. 3 minutes.
Okay. How is the navigator service being staffed and trained to handle the diverse range of questions from coastal property owners? And what's the average wait time for assistance?
I recognize Deputy Minister Murphy.
So as part of the Coastal Protection Action Plan, we've provided a grant to the Clean Foundation to operate a navigator service. And so that navigator service is available to all Nova Scotians who are looking for support when it comes to coastal protection on their properties. You know, I mentioned the coastal hazard map. Many Nova Scotians are comfortable with you know, accessing that information on their own, but not everyone is. And so for that reason, Clean Foundation is providing a navigator service. So anyone can call them up, you know, that's unsure, that have concerns, or maybe you're just looking for advice. And so these navigators are available. They get back to people right away. I know there are more than 400 Nova Scotians that have accessed their support. And they get back to Nova Scotians either the same day or the following day to answer whatever questions they might have about their property or about coastal protection generally.
Thank you, MLA Bowlby, with 1 minute.
All right. What specific criteria will be used to determine where warning signs are installed? And how will these signs be maintained over time, considering they'll likely be in higher risk areas?
Recognize Deputy Minister Murphy, 38 seconds.
Yeah, I think you're referring to our work with Public Works. So that's one of the actions in our action plan that I hadn't mentioned yet. Public Works have been installing signs on areas that are susceptible to flooding. And they've been doing that work over the last year or more. Public Works, you know, they're familiar with what areas of the province are at risk to flooding or might flood repeatedly, and so in those particular areas, they've been installing road signage.
Order. Before I move to see if any of the witnesses have closing statements, I want to, I don't know if you call this rule or clarify the point of order that was raised by MLA LaChance. The words excuse me, the words patchwork were used during the MLA LaChance's introductory remarks before beginning the question. They did not, MLA LaChance did not use the words patchwork when directing her question to Dr. Tittensor. So that's, I guess, as clear as we can make it. Words were used, but not in the specific question. So that concludes our question answer portion of the meeting. And I just asked, does anybody have any remarks before we call an end to this portion of the meeting? Any of our witnesses? Deputy Minister Murphy. Okay.
Just very briefly, I just want to thank all the witnesses as well for appearing, and we certainly appreciate all their comments, and I'd like to thank the committee for listening to what we had to say. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you all very. I'm sorry, Dr. Tittensor.
So I just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity to speak to the committee today. I appreciate your questions, and I hope that we can continue the discussion on permitting and making the process of restoring Nova Scotian ecosystems more straightforward. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ryder-Burbidge.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. Thanks for having us today. And building on Derek's comment, we hope it's clear through what we've heard today that there is a great opportunity here to do some of this important coastal restoration work, especially below the low tide water. And this is work that really needs to happen, and that really needs a push to help to get us where we need to be and where we can be to reach our kind of full potential as a province in that regard. And hopefully that is something that we can work together with the province on in developing the next phases of the Coastal Protection Action Plan. And thanks again for having us.
Okay, I'm going to thank everybody very much. Often we have a little 5-minute recess while folks leave if they wish, or they can stay if they wish. We're a little bit cramped for time here. So we're going to continue on with committee business, and witnesses are free to leave. Often the committee likes to personally say thanks. I expect they'll be out in very few minutes, and some of you folks may still be around. But at this point, we're going to move on to one of the discussion point we have as a committee is that in December, the Natural Resources and Economic Development Committee is set to meet on December 23rd. The committee can proceed with this date, meet on Thursday, the December 19th, or cancel the meeting. So I'm asking the committee where we want to go on that. Recognize MLA LaChance.
So given its date really close, to a busy period, particularly a busy period in constituencies, would it be possible to reschedule for January?
Yeah. So we have the meeting scheduled. We have the meeting scheduled for January. So the question becomes, I believe, is do we just move the schedule back? Is that the best option? Accepted option? So the suggestion, no motion at this point, but the suggestion is that we not have that meeting in December, that we meet in January as scheduled, and what we'll do is just move every topic back. Is that correct? Have I got that correct? Yeah. Yep. I'm open to a discussion or a motion.
I move to.
Oh, sorry. I recognize MLA McQuarrie.
I guess I move to cancel the December meeting and move the scheduling forward so that the December topic will be covered in January and so forth.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any other committee business? I recognize MLA Rankin. I'm doing this right.
Yeah, so I'd like to move the following motion, and based on the discussion today, I don't see any further progress on land protection in the province, and there is nothing but rumors surrounding a particular project, and absent any information from the government, absent being in the House session, this is one of our limited tools. So I think one thing we can do as a committee is to affirm our support for maintaining protected status. So the motion reads as follows. Be it resolved that the Standing Committee on Natural Resources and Economic Development affirms its support for maintaining the existing protected status of Nova Scotia's current protected coastal lands, including West Mabou Beach Provincial Park, and recommend that the government not remove, downgrade, or alter the protected status for any designated coastal protected area. I so move.
And I recognize MLA LaChance.
So I think just to speak in support of this, certainly during the legislative session, I did ask as many questions as I could in the short session about the protected lands goal, and really concerned about the lack of action and progress on this. In particular, I also think West Mabou is of huge concern in the community. It's a provincial park, and I think we think when there's a provincial park that's land that has been protected, let alone the fact that we need to protect more land. And we're hearing from Nova Scotians every day about West Mabou in particular, and I think it touches all Nova Scotians because everyone can think about a provincial park in their area. What would happen if suddenly there was a development proposal on it? And so, I think it's concerning that this government has not ruled this out, that the government is willing to discuss development in development in provincial parks. And so, we support this motion. We need to know now if Nova Scotians, they want to know if this government is going to let provincial parks be developed. But what they want is that the government will not remove, downgrade, or alter the protected status of West Mabou Beach Provincial Park or any other provincial parks.
I recognize MLA Wong.
Thank you, Chair. I do find it rich, actually, that this motion is coming from a former Lands and Forest Minister with the history in Owl's Head. I mean, I really do. We haven't heard from our guest today how rich in biodiversity that Owl's Head is through snorkeling out there, but I just want to quote something from 2019 when the Honourable Member was Lands and Forest Minister. Said there isn't enough high biodiversity value when you compare it to other pieces of land that we've advanced for legal protection. And the member went on to secretly and personally remove the park from the park's protected areas. So this government is committed to protecting biodiversity in the province. We will ensure that Nova Scotians make informed decisions about building along the coastline, supporting municipalities in doing just that by proper zoning and deploying resources. We're committed to meeting the ambitious conservation goals that's been brought up and ensuring that we don't shut the door on opportunities for good jobs and employment in all of our communities right around Nova Scotia. So we will not be supporting this motion.
I recognize MLA Rankin.
Yeah, I just want to correct the member who referenced that there was property removed from parks. It was not a park. So I just want to mention that there was land in Little Harbour that was proposed for a park, but this is about a potential removal of an official protected area, provincial park in the province, which has never happened before. And so that's why it's an important motion. And despite what the member read that was given to him from the 7th floor, presumably, we're talking about provincial park today, and all we're asking for is the committee to make sure the community of Mabou knows that that is not a possibility and not going to be entertained. So,
I recognize MLA LaChance.
And I think to clarify, I mean, I asked the minister in the House in terms of the commitment to meeting the legislative targets for protected lands, and that commitment actually wasn't particularly clear. And I asked the minister to provide a plan. I mean, we're talking 5 months at this point. Surely, if you're going to meet that target, there's a plan of what land you're going to include. So where is the purchasing plan for that, or whatever needs to happen? It has to be, I mean, if that target's going to be met, I mean, it just defies logic. It has to exist at this point. And, you know, and I think I understand the committee, or some members of the committee, wanted to add DNR to this meeting, recognizing their role in the permitting issue and other issues, and you know, that was unsuccessful as well. So I think this is actually completely appropriate, because we've tried in so many different ways to get the information from government about how this goal, the goals around protected areas, will be met.
Any further comments? I call for the question. All in favor? Aye. Contrary?
No.
Motion defeated. I believe that concludes legislative business, or this committee's business. Our next meeting will be on November the 25th, 2025, and the topic will be the impact of Nova Scotia Loyal Program. Witnesses being Department of Agriculture and Department of Growth and Development, Department of Service, Nova Scotia. This meeting is adjourned.